Welcome to another episode of the Global Green Action Project, a place where we get to meet amazing heroes doing great changes in the world to make it a more compassionate, kinder place through humanitarian, animal, and environmental initiatives. I'm your host, Jennifer, and today we get to meet another amazing guest speaker. Her name is Margaret Boersma. She's an educator, consultant, and coach who specializes in social emotional learning. We're going to have a great discussion about how social emotional learning can benefit us all to empower us to be the best versions of ourselves to help make the world a better place. We're also going to discuss some great examples of how youth can use the social emotional strategies to improve their communication skills with the educators and parents in their lives. So, having said all that, let's begin. It's now time to introduce you to the incredible Margaret Boersma. Welcome, Margaret. So glad to have you here today. Looking forward to hearing about the wonderful opportunities that our global family have when they are introduced to your skill set in terms of helping support all of us have our most resilient and happy life. Feel free to share a little bit more about what you offer and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Thank you for the introduction. Academically, I was one of the only children in the whole school that was an English language learner. And I suffered oppression as a result. And having spent a lot of years overcoming that, I feel for kids, not just kids who are English language learners, but kids who don't necessarily learn the way most teachers teach. So they're more kinesthetic learners or they're more interpersonal learners, and those are my strengths. And I have found ways to teach that really light kids up and engage their entire brain and not just parts of it, as a lot of teachers do. So I find that kids are much more enrolled in their learning. They find it much more relevant because we go deep, especially into the emotional intelligence. Social and emotional intelligence is the new IQ, and we need to embrace that. And I think the pandemic has shed a light on that need. It was there before. Our kids were getting more and more anxious. They're getting overwhelmed. They are withdrawing or having outbursts. So all those things have just increased because of the situation in the pandemic. And so it is glaringly obvious that we need to teach social and emotional learning. And so I have gone through a lot of training to develop myself in that. And having come from the background I was very passionate to do that so that I could make a difference to educators, to parents, to youth, and to children. So I've developed a lot of programs around that.
With that in mind, it brings up the importance of clarity in terms of what is social emotional intelligence and learning. Perhaps if we kind of dig a little deeper into the definition of what that is and what it looks like in terms of its benefits, it will help clarify some questions that our viewers might have.
Okay, so social and emotional intelligence is um, having an awareness of our emotions when we experience them. A lot of us aren't aware. How to manage those emotions once we are aware. How to recognize somebody else's emotions. And I often do with children, I often have them experience body language and read body language because we need to be taught that. We don't always just get it. How to manage our social relationships. So our relationships with our parents, with our friends, with our teachers, with anybody else in our environment and in our space. How to manage those, whether it's in face to face or on the computer. Like, it doesn't matter. And then how to make responsible decisions. Like, those are the 5 components of CASEL. And CASEL is CASEL, and it stands for the Collaborative of Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And it's an organization that's been in the US for about 30 years, and they did a lot on research But now in the last 4 or 5 years, they've gotten more into supporting teachers. I went to their very first big conference and it was overbooked by 1,500 people, and there were like 2,000 there. It was incredible. And so a lot of the social emotional learning that happens, especially in the US, and now we're getting to know it more worldwide as a term, SEL, is based in CASEL. And they have a wonderful website with a lot of resources as well. So those 5 components is from CASEL, and all my teaching is around those 5 components as well.
Fantastic. What are the benefits? If we just kind of summarize some of the benefits, we talked a little bit so far on a few, but perhaps we can, other than just touching upon them, dig a little deeper in terms of the benefits now.
There's a lot of us as adults that we kind of are children in adult bodies, if I might say it like that. And it shows when our buttons are pushed, when we feel triggered or activated. And when that happens, we can resort to yelling or, having a kind of a version of a temper tantrum. And that is a child reacting because we have taken something personally that we don't need to take personally. What somebody says is what somebody says. And if we can just hear that as yakety yak, then not to say that we're disrespecting them, but not to take it personally, because what happens is we react impulsively, like shoot off the hip, right? Rather than respond thoughtfully. So in this type of training, one of the benefits is you get to realize how you can respond thoughtfully, how you can not take something so personally, how you can be aware of your own emotions. What are your triggers? For me, I realized that as a teacher, when somebody flatly refuses to do what I ask them to do, that can be a trigger for me. And what I used to do was just get more assertive and even holler at them. And I think that's not the way to deal with this, because a child who is defiant is just going to continue to be defiant. So then you're in this huge tug of war, and as the adult in charge, you feel like you have to win, but it is a lose-lose game. And if you know that in advance, then you'll get much more respect from whoever it is, the student or your peer or your spouse, or it doesn't matter. So having another way to think about it is where the mindset comes in. And that's why I do a lot on mindset strategies. Like how would you be able to keep yourself in an empowering context, even in that example, right? So what are some practical strategies? So we go into things like that, and people bring me their real examples. And then we together, because we've had some of the theory at this time, we talk through how to do that. And I think some of the different types of modules that we have, like it's just 1 hour a week, but they include things like, the planning for success. There are 3 steps for planning for success. What are they? And it's a very empowering way to do it. And you can be successful if you're thinking like this, but most of us don't. So these are things, restoring integrity, right? If we're late, or if your students are late with an assignment, or if you're a youth and you're handing something in late, how do you deflate the teacher before you get bombarded with blame and detentions and all that? You have to be proactive. You have to take initiative and use the 4-step formula, the make it right formula. And then you'll be surprised at the response of the teacher. It won't be a flying rage.